Hey folks, this lesson is defining and evaluating the basic trig functions. This is the first part of module 18.2. This is kind of a heavy lesson here, so I'm going to divide it up into at least two sections, maybe three right here. So here, our question is, what is the relationship between the unit circle and radian measure? Okay. So we're going to evaluate basic trig functions. Remember SOHCAHTOA, you guys? SOHCAHTOA represents this. The sine of an angle equals the opposite over the hypotenuse, the opposite leg. So the sine is opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle, this is angle theta, remember from the last one, is adjacent leg over hypotenuse. So the cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And the tangent of an angle equals the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. So opposite over adjacent right there, okay? So we said some old hippie caught another hippie taking old apples. Sorry, you guys, if you'd heard a different one. I'm not a fan of that, especially being a teacher anyway. So some old hippie caught another hippie taking old apples. That's how you spell SOHCAHTOA. Okay, also recall we got a 45, 45, 90 triangle. These are isosceles because of the 45s right there. And whatever the legs are, the hypotenuse is root 2 times the leg. And then the 30, 60, 90 triangle, everything revolves around the shorter leg. So if you know the shorter leg, you multiply it by root 3 and that gets you the longer leg. And you double it and that gets you the hypotenuse. And I always like to think that the 30 had a root 3 baby. That's how I remember it, okay? All right, now, in a unit circle, you guys, the hypotenuse of these are 1s. So instead of 2a and a root 2, they're 1. So we have to go backwards. Okay, so here, if we knew the legs, we multiply by root 2 to get the hypotenuse. But if we know the hypotenuse, we got to divide by root 2. So I did that right here, 1 divided by root 2. And you remember when you dividing by a radical, you multiply it by root 2 over root 2, so it becomes root 2 over 2. So when the hypotenuse is 1, the legs are root 2 over 2, both of those, okay? And then here, if we knew the shorter leg, we would double it to get the longer leg. So we're going to take half of this 1, and that'll get us the shorter leg. So the shorter leg is 1/2. And then the 30 had a root 3 baby from the shorter leg right here. So we're going to tag a root 3 with this, multiply it. So this is going to be root 3 over 2 for the longer leg right there. All right? Okay, so here we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle inscribed in quadrant 1. Okay, so 45, 45, 90. Remember, the hypotenuse is 1 in a unit circle right here. So when we go to the right, it's positive. So that's why this is root 2 over 2. And when we go up, it's positive. Think of graphing an ordered pair. Positive, positive. Over here, this would be negative, positive. Down here, it would be negative, negative. Over here, it would be positive, negative. Okay? All right, so now we are going to reflect that over the y-axis. So this triangle is going to go right over here and get reflected over there. Okay, now remember, you guys, instead of it being root 2 this way, we went to the left, so it's negative root 2. Okay, this still went up, so it's still root 2 over 2. Sorry, negative root 2 over 2. All right, now we're going to take that and reflect it over the x-axis. So this guy goes down here. Okay, so we go to the left and we're going to go down. So those are both negative root 2 over 2's. Look, the hypotenuse is still 1. Okay, now we're going to reflect this over the y-axis. Okay, so this is going to go over here. So we're going to go to the right, down. So positive and then negative root 2 over 2. Okay, so now notice the degrees, you guys. This is 45 degrees right here, okay? This 135 right here is 45 off of this. Remember, this is 180 right there. This is 180, so if we go backwards 45 degrees, this would be 135 degrees. If this is 180 and we go this way 45 degrees, this gets us 225 degrees. Now this one is 270, so if we add 45, we get 315, or we can take 360 and subtract 45, okay? Now to find the sine, cosines, and tangents of these angles, 45, 45, 135, 225, and 315, we just find the sine, cosine, and tangent of this 45. We just got to watch for the signs, okay? So here, remember, this is negative and this is positive, and this is positive. The hypotenuse is always positive. So we just got to watch for these signs, whether they're positive or negative, okay? So here we go. We're going to go ahead and find the sine, find the ratio of each trig function, sine, cosine, and tangent of those angles right there, the 45, 35, 225, and 315. All right, so let's find the sine of 45. Opposite over hypotenuse. So we get root 2 over 2 over 1. The cosine of 45 is adjacent over the hypotenuse. It's also root 2 over 2 over 1. And then the tangent is opposite over adjacent. Well, root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2 is just 1. Okay, so there's the sine, cosine, and tangent of 45. Okay, let's do 135. Okay, so the sine is going to be opposite leg, which is root 2 over the hypotenuse. The cosine is going to be the adjacent leg, which is negative root 2 over the hypotenuse. The tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. Okay, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Okay, so it's negative 1 right there. Okay, let's do 225. 225, we're going to use this triangle. Opposite over hypotenuse, so negative root 2 over 1, and then the cosine is adjacent, which is the same, negative root 2 over 1. Okay, the tangent, be careful, we get a negative divided by a negative is a positive, root 2 over root 2 over 2 is 1. All right, one more, let's do 315, that's this triangle. So the sine is opposite, which is negative root 2 over 1. The cosine of this is adjacent, which is root 2 over the hypotenuse. And then the tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's going to be a negative divided by a positive is a negative. Okay? All right. So let's do the same thing for this 30, 60, 90 triangle. So what we're first going to do is reflect it all over. So remember, the 30 had a root 3 baby. So if this is 1, this is 1/2, and then the 30 had a root 3 baby from the shorter side right here. Okay? All right, so the sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, the cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and the tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, we're going to reflect it over here. Remember, when we go to the left, it's negative. When we go up, it's positive. To the left, negative, down, negative. To the right, positive, down, negative. So when we reflect it, there they all are right there. Okay, so now, okay, so this is 60 degrees right there. Remember, this is 180, so if we go back 60 degrees, this would be, 120 right there. 180 plus 60 degrees is 240. And then 360 minus this 60 right here will get me 300. So there's the degrees right there. So now we're going to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 60, 120, 240, and 300 from these triangles right here. Okay, so here we go. So the sine of 60 is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, root 3 over 2 over 1. Okay, the cosine of 60 is adjacent over hypotenuse, 1/2 over 1. The tangent is opposite over adjacent. So root 3 over 2 over 1/2 is root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. And so we invert and multiply, and then that just gets us root 3. Okay, all right, so let's find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 120. So it's the same as this 60. So opposite over hypotenuse is sine. Okay, adjacent over hypotenuse. So it's negative 1/2 over 1, which is negative 1/2. Okay, the tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So this is going to be negative root 3. Okay, all right, let's find it of 240. So we're going to go down here. So the sine is opposite negative root 3 over 2 over the hypotenuse. So it's negative root 3 over 2. The cosine is adjacent, which is negative 1/2 over the hypotenuse. Okay, and then the tangent, we get an, let's see, there's the angle. So it's an opposite, opposite over adjacent. So when we do opposite over adjacent right there, so I'm sorry, this is the opposite and this is the adjacent right here. So negative divided by negative is a positive root 3, okay? And then over here, 300, opposite over hypotenuse is sine, so negative root 3 over 2, positive 1/2 over 2. And then this one's going to be opposite over adjacent. So this negative root 3 over 2 over a positive 1/2 gets me a negative root 3. Okay, let's do that again with this triangle right here. Okay, remember the 30 had a root 3 baby, so that's the one with the root 3. The shorter leg is 1/2. The hypotenuse is 1. So let's reflect it over. Remember, when we go to the left, it's negative, up is positive. Left negative, down negative. Right positive, down negative. Okay, so there they are right there. So now this is 30 degrees, and this is 30 degrees off of 180. So this is 150. This is 180 plus 30, so that's 210. This is 360 minus 30, so that's going to get me 330 right there. So now we can find the sine, cosine, and tangent of these angles by using these triangles right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So the sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The sine of 30 is 1/2. The cosine is adjacent over the hypotenuse, so it's root 3 over 2. The tangent is opposite over adjacent, so 1/2 over root 3 over 2 is 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2, and that's going to get me the 2's cancel, so that gets me 1 over root 3. Well, we don't like having the radical downstairs, so we multiply it by root 3 over root 3. Okay, so what that does is it gets rid of the radical. Root 3 times root 3 is just 3, and then on top we have 1 times root 3, which is just root 3 over 3. Okay, over here, so that's what this is going to be. Root 3 over 3, it's just going to be one's positive, one's negative, positive, negative. So we just, over here, it's going to be negative. Okay, but anyways, let's do sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, 1/2. The cosine is adjacent, which is this negative root 3 over 2 over 1. So it's negative root 3 over 2. And the tangent is opposite over adjacent. So it's going to be 1/2 over negative root 3 over 2. So it's going to be negative this value right here. So negative root 3 over 3. Okay, 210 is down here. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Negative 1/2 over 1 is negative 1/2. And then adjacent over hypotenuse. And then finally, opposite over adjacent. Just be careful. A negative divided by negative is a positive. Okay, 330 over here. Sine, cosine, and tangent gets us that right there. Alright, so if you guys are in my class, I'm going to have you do that assignment, and if you need it, if you're at home, here it is. You're just going to have to pause it right here. There's 3 charts. You're just going to fill them out. We just did that in our notes, so hopefully you have them. So you're going to fill that out, pause it. Okay, this is the middle part. You're going to pause it, and then here's the bottom part. Only one side to this worksheet, alright? Okay, you guys take care.